Welcome back to the SEN League YouTube channel. My name is Charles Goodser. I'm joined again by Dominic Creniti. Dom, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get cracking onto this, doing a bit of research on this. A lot of teams have exceeded expectations and plenty have gone right below.
Yeah, so we're going to do a mid-season review. We did this at the start of the year where we just joined in, had a look at all the teams, gave our early season predictions. Some have been correct, some have not been correct. I'll say right off the bat, my predictions about the Dragons and the Raiders have been complete failures.
Yep.
So we're going to get into all that. We're going to go through the team's best win, their worst loss, best player, room for improvement, their run home to see what they can achieve throughout the latter half of the season, and then give them a mid-season grade from A being amazing to F being complete and utter fail. Sound good?
Yep.
All right, let's start with the Gold Coast Titans. Do you want to kick us off here, Dom?
Yeah, the Gold Coast Titans, obviously a bit of the story of the season. Everyone was expecting them to have a massive improvement under Des. And look, it's just been a bit of a disappointment to start. They've had some glimmers of hope in the last couple of weeks, but yeah, it just hasn't been a very, very rocky start for the Titans.
Yeah, not great. For the best win, I'm going to go that win against the Warriors during that Anzac round. I think it was 27-24. They really needed a win, and they somehow compiled it all together against a really good Warriors team in New Zealand as well. I thought that was their best win for the year, and I thought they were onto much better things. But I think their worst loss, for me, alarm bells started ringing that first game against the Dragons in round one. I think it was 28-4 at the start, and many people thought the Dragons were going to go worse. They've since proven that they're a lot better than most people predicted. But I just think that was alarm bells straight away. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a fair point. My worst loss was actually a couple of weeks ago. Was it last week against the Rabbitohs, 46-12? I just thought
that
the
was
Rabbitohs
bad.
side that was just desperate. Like, that was a game that they really should have won. They should have gone out there and put a bit of a statement on them. Obviously, they've had plenty of injuries in key positions as well, but I think that's a little bit more down to recruitment and the players that they're buying. Shout out to the Titans front office there. But my best win was the 2-point win over the Broncos. I thought that was just a nice little gritty one, and always good for the little brother, even littler brother now with the Dolphins, to get one up against the Broncos. Best player, I think it's pretty obvious this one, AJ Brimson.
I think AJ Brimson's been good. I think that's where my mind drew first. I want to give a shout out to Keno Kinney as well. I thought he's killed it at fullback. AJ Brimson, a bit injured as well, so a bit unfortunate. But I think, Kinney deserves a shout out.
Can I give a shout out?
Yeah, of course you can, mate.
Classy Haas.
Yes.
What a player.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal find for the Titans. He's just like Payne Haas 2.0. I love it.
Yeah, I think what we're getting at is that the Titans definitely have, and we said this at the start of the year, they have the pieces around them.
Yep.
I thought they'd be a lot better, quicker under Des Hasler. I think we've seen glimpses here and there. I reckon they'll probably be better for the long run, and that's where I think their room for improvement can be. Just find some consistency between your best and your worst performance, and don't finish last. You never want to finish last, especially under the first season of a new coach.
Yeah.
What are you giving them out of a grade?
Oh, this one was a tough one. I've given them a D+ for the time being, because the start of the season would be a complete F, but Tino's out. Dave Fafita's basically quit the club and then joined back. So there's a lot of stuff happening off the field that would affect it. Plenty of injuries, but yeah, I'm going to give that a D+ for the Titans.
Yeah, look, I was going to give them an F initially because I think this season has been a bit of a fail, especially where a lot of people expected them to be.
Yep.
But when you account for injuries, and I think what you just said, look, we've seen glimpses. I'm going to go with you. We'll go for a D there. Now, moving on to the West Tigers, who got their most recent win at Leichhardt Oval against the Titans to move. They both just switched places, but it's good that it basically the halfway point of the season, Tigers aren't at the bottom of the ladder.
Yep.
They're towards the bottom. I think their best win definitely was that Easter Monday clash against the Eels. Another 17-16 victory. I think it was another goal and point. Aiden Caesar, the hero.
Yep.
I think it was the least convincing field goal I've ever seen in my life. But hey, it went in. They all count. Doesn't matter. I think their worst loss, I think that one against the Dragons recently in Wollongong, where they led 14-12 at halftime. I said this in the office. I said this on Traders News in a nutshell as well, from 5 to 6 a.m. here on SEN 1170 a.m. Is that I fell asleep at halftime. It was 14-12. I woke up. I asked my girlfriend, who's a Tigers supporter, hey, did the Tigers win? She said, hell no. They lost by 50-odd points. And I said, nah, surely not. Checked the next morning, 56-14. I couldn't believe it. I just thought that was really poor. They had a really great first half. Then to let it all slip with 42 unanswered points, let Zach Lomax basically be prime Joey Johns in the second half.
Joey Johns on the wing.
Yeah. What do you think about the Tigers so far this season?
Yeah, look, and I'm going to spoil my grade already. It's a flat out failure, to be honest, and you can almost ride the season off already. And same thing happened. This is the worrying thing if I was a Tigers fan. Same thing happened last year. They go, oh, don't worry, next year we got these players coming in and we're going to be improved. We got Benji. And now it's already like, oh, don't worry. Next year we got Luai, we got Taruva, and we're going to get rid of all these old players. So I'd be really worried if I was a Tigers fan in that sense. Obviously, Lockie Galvin's been great as well, but he doesn't want to be there much longer either, does he?
Yeah, well, he's since he hasn't re-signed because he's already under contract, but he's since just been, he's recommitted to the club.
Yeah.
He's probably my best player, Lachlan Galvin.
Yeah,
I think. Happy. Yeah, I think with Abby Coruscant, we know exactly what we're going to get. With Lockie Galvin, he was a bit of an unknown for most rugby league fans. I think what it's shown that the Tigers have a good young core. If they can just keep them together, the likes of Luai coming in, Taruva's coming in, they're starting to offload some players that are draining their salary cap. Isaiah Pabali'i is already one that's going to the Panthers. I'm not as harsh. I think the biggest thing they need to do, their room for improvement, just don't finish last.
Yeah, 100%.
Just it would be 100%. So demoralising for just 3 wooden spoons in a row. As a Knights fan, I know how demoralising that is. It isn't great.
Yeah.
I think they've been a little bit better this season. I don't think they're an F grade for me personally, but I've given them around a D minus. But in the interest of just, look, it's been a pretty bad season.
Yeah.
Like, irrespective of how you feel about the Tigers in previous years, they're still sitting 16th with 3 wins. They just had a 9-game losing streak. They beat the team that is below them on the ladder.
Yep.
So I think, we can give them an F.
Yeah, I've noticed you're a little bit of a Appy Coruscant hater because I love Appy. I think personally, on his day, I think he's the best hooker in the game.
I'm not an Appy Coruscant hater, but I'm not an Appy Coruscant truther either. Shout out to Joel Kane.
Maybe I'm an Appy Coruscant fanboy.
Maybe. But we're going to give them an F. Moving on to the Eels. Not a great season for the Eels. 4 wins, 10 losses. However, I want it to be known, I said in the early season review, I said that this team is just not as good as everyone thinks it is. I said they'd finish best case scenario 6th. I didn't predict them to finish 15th. Brad Arthur obviously gone. Whether or not you think that was the right decision or the wrong decision, I think change needed to be made.
Yep.
Where do you see the Eels so far? What do you think their best win was for the season?
There's not many to pick from, really.
No.
But it's probably that win against the Sharks, 34-22. But then there's just you look at the snapshot of their season and it's just bad loss after bad loss. Lost to the Bulldogs a couple of weeks ago in a game that they really should have won. Packed crowd, all the factors and all that. They lost 42-26 to the Rabbitohs side. That was worse reeling than them. They've got bodies back now, so it's not too bad. But the Eels, it's got to be it's not a fail, I'd say, because they're still showing glimmers, and they've been Moses and Brown being out really hurts. And it's more just a depiction on how bad their books are unbalanced. Like, you've got Moses, Brown, Campbell, Gillard, Ryan Madison, Sean Lane, Jermaine Hopgood, these superstars, and then just nothing in between. So a bit of consistency.
I think they rely too much on their stars. It's the big thing we can take
yeah.
away from this, and that's my biggest room for improvement. Just make sure that the role players are providing just a little bit more. I think their best win was that early win against the Seagulls because we saw Blaze Talangi, a young star, on the rise shine. I think he's probably been their best player, even though he hasn't played that much. I think he's probably been the thing that Eels fans can cling into most.
Yeah.
I think the Dolphins' loss 44-16 in Darwin is probably the beginning of the end for this team this year.
That's a fair point.
For me, that's my worst loss.
Yeah.
I think for the run home now, it's all just about, banking a couple of wins.
Yep.
I think they're a lot better than where they are on the ladder. I think Mitch Moses and Clint Gutherson, although at the time of recording this, he's now out for surgery for a number of weeks.
Yep.
I think having the stars back is good. I think it's now just performing well and just ensuring that the new coach inherits a good team that's at least got a little bit of confidence. So I'm giving them a D for the rating.
Yeah, I went D-. I'd be happy with a D, though. I just want to give shout out Jermaine Hopgood as well. Obviously, worked his way back in the Origin team. He's been nothing but consistent for a pack that's kind of lacked a bit of energy and a bit of go forward. Obviously, they've shown improvement the last couple of weeks, but yeah, they really need to work on balance in the books, whether that is offloading a junior bowler, sorry, apologies for the pronunciation there, but or Regan Campbell-Gillard. They just need to get rid of one of them to open up the books. And, the Zach Lomax is coming next year. Get a few more players like that. Bailey Simonson, need to re-sign him and all those other players.
Yeah, so I think a lot of room for improvement for the Eels, but we give them a D. Now moving on to the Rabbitohs. And I'm going to start right off the bat. I think both of us are going to agree it's an F. I think it's been an absolute failure of a season so far at the moment. I think their best win was that Good Friday win, just to sort of get the pressure off a little bit. But I think the week before against the Roosters, 48-6, was definitely their worst loss.
Yep.
Never want to lose by that margin, but losing to your biggest rival by that amount, Allianz Stadium, Friday night, prime time, and just not turning up at all was probably the worst there. I think Keon Kolomatangi, again, has probably been their best player. I think he's really improved in the last couple of weeks. I've seen in our SEN League Player of the Year votes, he's featured quite prominently in the last couple of weeks. I think right now it's just all about building for next season, looking ahead. Wayne Bennett's coming. I think a lot of those older, more senior players are going to try to play their heart out to make sure that they can prove themselves still on the roster. But it's time and tell. But I think it's definitely an F.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. Basically everything there. I had Keon Kalamatangi as the best player almost by default. Not in a bad way, because Keon's been a beast for the last couple of years, but he's just the last man standing, really, out of that experienced Rabbitohs side. I thought their best win was last week against the Titans. I thought really showed what they can do. Latrell needed a big game and showed up to get his origin spot back. So the Rabbitohs next year will likely bring in Tavita Pangai Jr. and Jack DeBellin, which I'm gutted about as a Dragons fan. I think they're going to be great additions. What they really needed, just some solid depth and experience in the forwards, because you look at what happened this year and you got guys like Tallis Duncan, who's a fantastic future prospect, playing probably a little bit too much or having too much responsibility on his shoulders. So, yeah, I think an F for the Rabbitohs is a little bit harsh, but it's hard not to agree with that.
Yeah, I just think for the expectation this year, and they just really haven't turned up at all. The first team to sack their coach this year as well, Jason Demetrio, just, I think, completely lost it's a bit of a cliche term, but lost the locker room.
I think he did, and shout out to us too, because when we did our coach power rankings at the start of the year, we had two coaches the most under pressure, and who were they? Brad Arthur and Jason Demetrio, and with no disrespect to those lads, who doesn't have a job anymore? Those two, so shout out to us. Don't leave me hanging on YouTube. Come on.
Gotcha. Moving on to my Newcastle Knights in 13th spot. It was really hard to find their best win. I'm going to go that first win of the season against the Storm, 14-12. The Storm had a lot of outs. Yep. This was a game that they had to win. And although the score wasn't that great for Newcastle, a win's a win. You'll take it either way. Initially, from the worst loss, I was going to go that recent loss 32-2 against the Bulldogs. Yep. But I'm going to go a different flavour. I'm going to go that 22-20 loss to the Roosters on Thursday night, where for most of it, the Knights were just hanging in there. They had a shot, many chances to win in the death, and just really silly little mistakes, like no one running with Kalen Ponga when he broke free. Brayley kicking the ball on the last tackle on the last play of the game rather than giving it to one of our playmakers. I think just those little bits there just, I don't know, it just infuriates Knights fans and it infuriates me a lot. Yeah. The shining light has been David Armstrong. 100%. And it's a bit sad now with the news that he's going to go off to the Super League. I think all the power to him, especially in a situation like the Newcastle Knights where you've got Kalen Ponga, now Fletcher Sharp is coming into the fray. I think it was just obvious that he was probably below the pecking order, but I thought he was really strong. My room for improvement, and I know I'm ranting a little bit here, Dom, but this is just my team.
Go for it, brother.
Just be more creative. In attack, it just looks really basic, really bland. It doesn't look like there's really any spark at all. I think Bradman Best has been below his, for lack of a better word, best. It just hasn't been a great year so far. Yep. For that reason, I'm giving them an F.
Oh,
I'm giving them I just don't think it's been good enough this season, especially from the highs of last season. They needed to capitalise. I thought it was going to be a one-season wonder, and so far I'm being proven right.
As a neutral fan for the Newcastle Knights, I agree with everything you said there. Even my improvement was creativity in attack. They've got nothing going forward. Kalen Ponga's been injured, and Kalen Ponga, on his day, is the best player in the league. He's Dally M medalist last year. You've seen what he could do at all three levels of NRL. I mean, the F having Kalen Ponga out, I think that's a little bit harsh.
I think Kalen Ponga being out proves how important he is to the team in terms 100%. Of their attack, and I think I'll change my grading because I feel like this is just me being a little bit biased against my own team. What do you a D? Do you think?
I went D+, to be honest, because they have lacked in a lot of areas, but Bradman Best and Ponga being injured really doesn't help, and then. Obviously, you got Armstrong wants to leave. He starts playing. He becomes your best player. Then Sharp comes through and replaces him. It's like everything's happening all over the shop. A lot of people questioning if Adam O'Brien should have got the extension. You got rumours of players rejecting the club, and now they're in talks to sign Josh Schuster, and Jackson Hastings is going at us in SEN League DMs. I mean, it's just a lot of external factors that have played into a pretty poor start to the season on the field for the Knights. Yeah,
so not a great start for the Knights this year, but hey, second half, who knows? They got on a run last year, just got to wait and see. The Warriors in 12th position, 6 wins, 1 draw, 7 losses. I think their best win was that Magic Round win against the Panthers, 22-20. I think I think that was just really super hard fought. They had that never say die attitude, which I think
That's what they built last season off, essentially, right?
Exactly right. I think their worst loss was probably that loss to the Dragons in Wollongong. I think
Yep.
lost like 30-12 or something. That's when alarm bells started ringing for me and being like, maybe this isn't the same team as last year. Maybe they can't reach the same heights. They have had a lot of injuries. I think, and we're going to talk about the Broncos a little bit later as well. I think a lot of teams have been cruelled by injury, which is why they're not going as great. So I want to give the Warriors a little bit of a pass there. I think Tamara Martin has been their best player. I think especially with the absence of Sean Johnson, I think he's really stepped up. I think but their forward pack has been outstanding. I think Mitch Barnett is probably, I'd say that's probably your best player.
Shans Nickel-Klokstad has been their best player. I think Tamari Martin's been one of their more consistent. And Fanua Blake as well has been fantastic. I had to give him a shout out. Yet the thing about it is Tamari Martin, I don't think has the ability to win a game like Shans Nickel-Klokstad has had for the Warriors. And I think his performances, kind of as per usual, just flying under the radar. He's such a solid and consistent player there. And especially, he had so much pressure coming in. RTS is back.
Yeah.
Everyone assumed within 6 rounds they're making the call to bring him back to fullback. So, But no, my best win was probably that 42-12 one over the Cowboys. And it's like you said, they had that never show die attitude. The up the wires spirit was there again, and that really gave the Warriors fans a lot of hope. They had a couple bad losses to the Storm this year as well, which kind of play into that worst loss.
That early loss to the Storm when Xavier Coates scored that try is definitely haunt them.
Greatest game winner of all time in NRL
history.
Yeah,
it's definitely up there. I think the room for improvement, it's really hard to say a team that's got so many injured players needs to improve.
Yeah.
They just need to find a way to get more of their best on the park, which is easier said than done, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest reason why they're currently where they are on the ladder. And for that reason, I give them a C.
I gave them a C as well.
Yeah.
My improvement was basically the same. I looked at it, I thought, what can the Warriors do better that they can't, physically work on? They're pretty good in attack, and it's just a few things, like you said, they've got bodies, they've had plenty of bodies out. I was genuinely puzzled. I'm like, what do the Warriors need to improve? I can't put it down to one thing except getting players back on the field and just kind of getting behind, embracing the community again and kind of getting the whole country behind them. They've had so many sellouts in a row in New Zealand, and they're really building something special there. So I think they really need to capitalise on this season as well.
Right, Dom, let's now move on to the Dragons, and this was the team I had. I'm not sure if you had it as your wooden spoon.
Oh, 100%. I said they wouldn't win a game outside the bye, which I got to say sorry to Shane Flanagan. I'm sorry, my brother.
Yeah, I owe all apologies. I've said it numerous times on air this year that I owe all Dragons fans a massive apology. I wasn't expecting it. I don't think many people were expecting it, but they're a lot better than the last place team that a lot of people thought they would be this year. I'm going to go back to that round 1 win against the Titans. I expected them to get pumped on the Gold Coast. I think they just stormed home and just proved to the competition, hey, we're no easy beats.
Yeah, that's fair.
We're a lot better, and I think that really set the tone for the season. I think the worst loss, there have been a couple. There have been a few stinkers here and there. I think, Anzac Day is hard to go past 6-18. I'm going to go the Thursday night footy loss against the Dogs, where they lost 44 to 12 or something, where they allowed 30-odd points unanswered in the second half. I think they led at halftime as well. So that's probably my worst loss. Best player on 3. 1, 2, 3. Zach Lomax.
I'm sorry.
Ben Hunt.
I'm sorry. I don't get where this Zach Lomax... I love Zach Lomax. I've loved him for years. He's been great, but there's no world where he's been our best player. Ben Hunt, take Ben Hunt out of that team. We are a shell of ourselves. Kyle Flanagan and Jesse Marsky, no disrespect to them. If that was our starting half pair, we genuinely wouldn't have a win this year. Zach Lomax, at the end of the day, he's only a winger. There's only so much that a winger can do. He's not putting in the 5th tackle kicks. He's not stringing the team around. He's not running the offense. I don't get where this is coming from. Ben Hunt has been our best player since 2018, and the last 6 seasons in a row, he's been our best player. So I'm sorry, this Zach Lomax has not been the best player this year.
That is surprising to me. Look, it's hard to disagree with Ben Hunt, but I think Zach Lomax has just had an outstanding year, earned Origin selection. There's all that hoo-ha, hubbla about him going to the Eels because he doesn't want to play on the wing, although he's playing his best footy on the wing. Doesn't matter. As it stands right now, I think he's been their best player. I think their room for improvement is just be more consistent. Their best is really good. Their worst we've seen is really bad, big blowout losses.
100%.
But to be honest, I think that's a win for Shane Flanagan in his first year. I think this is how you do a rebuild. I think Shane Flanagan has laid out the plan, and that is why I'm giving them an A+ for mid-season. I think it's been you can quote me on this. I think it's been a perfect season so far for the Dragons. They're hanging in there. They're 7-7. They're on the cusp of the 8. They could easily sneak in there if they just get more consistent But from what we've seen, Shane Flanagan has got more out of this roster than the last couple of Dragons coaches, and I think that it's a massive win.
100%.
That's
Yeah,
why I'm going
100%.
A+.
Look, I can't. There's no world in which I'm agreeing to an A+ on this. I'm sorry. But look, Ben Hunt, Jaden Sewer, Zach Lomax, Origin players, right? Obviously, Flanagan's brought them up to another level. We've got to give him big credit for that. But he has shown a lot of glimpses of like he wanted to get rid of Zach Lomax. Now you look at him playing career best footy and you go, probably not the best decision, right? Brought his son to the club. Kyle wears 110% every single game. He's a great effort player. But again, probably not the type of player that you need for a rebuild like this. He's probably preparing for a world without Ben Hunt. But there's still, like I said, a lot of every game he picks a bench of 4 forwards, and we always have a back go down. That's what cost us on Anzac Day. He goes, Tom Eisenhuth, you played in the centres once 3 years ago. You can go play there and get absolutely towed up for the whole game. So Shane Flanagan, I'm talking to you right now. Pick a better bench, my brother. Utility player, please.
What's your grading?
I'll give him a B.
A B? I'm happy to go with a B. I think I might be getting sucked in with the hyperbole and the romance of what they've done this season. I think it's been remarkable. But yeah, I think B's fair enough. Let's move on to the Cowboys. I predicted at the start of the year the Cowboys would be my top 4 smoky for the year. And it really hasn't panned out that way. It's hard to judge their best win because the teams that they've beaten haven't really been that great. I'm going to go to the start of the year against the Dolphins because I think what we've seen right now is that the Dolphins are a much better team than they showed in that round 1 game. 43-18, they completely dominated at showing. I think their worst loss so far this year, probably against the Sharks, 42-6. It's a game against, irrespective of how we feel about the Sharks, we'll probably touch on the Sharks a little bit later. It's a top 4 opponent. It's at a ground you don't play very well at, in Sydney where you don't play very well at, and you put up a stinker of a performance. Like, let's be real. Their best player, Scott Drinkwater.
Yeah, 100%.
Did you have Scott Drinkwater as well?
Scott Drinkwater. Shout out Ruben Cotter.
Ruben Cotter's always great.
As consistent as always. Jeremiah Nanai has had a bit of an improvement season after a little bit of a disappointing one last year. Val Holmes has been great as well. And the Cowboys, I think, promisingly, have got a couple of young stars in the wings ready to go, which makes this little bit of a disappointing start a little bit more. You've got that glimmer of hope, right, at the end of the tunnel. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I had that best win and best loss as well. I think the number one improvement for the Cowboys is defense.
Yeah,
I don't know
leak way too many points.
The Cowboys used to be 2 years ago when they were that top 4 perennial contender was, our defense is a bit shaky, but we're always going to score more points than you. And now that creativity's flair has kind of, dulled out a little bit with Dearden's playing Origin a little bit more now. He's always in the squad. So Chad Townsend's got a lot more responsibility and he just kind of hasn't been living up to that, that big price tag they brought him in for. So they have to really get down, and Todd Payton's got some work to do to get that defense back in line.
Yeah, I'm going to go a C. I think it's been like a 6 out of 10 season so far. I think they definitely can go on a run. I still have them in my finals. Yeah, I think that run home. I think they're probably going to come. 3 buys to come as well, which is huge. They haven't had a bye yet as of recording this episode, so plenty to play for the Cowboys. Let's move on to the Broncos, who currently find themselves outside the top 8, which is a sentence I didn't think we would say when we were going to do this video. 7-7, plenty of injuries. Where do you want to start with this one, Dom?
All right, we'll get straight into it then with the Broncos. Their best win, I think, was against the Dolphins. They haven't really had that big statement win that they had a lot of last year, which comes into my worst loss, which was round 3 when they just got absolutely spanked by the Panthers in Penrith in the grand final.
And that's when Reece Walsh was taken out of the game because of a hit on Taylor May.
Yeah, it seems like there's a bit of a thing for taking Reece Walsh out of big games. just absolutely
careful.
Their players, obviously Reece Walsh has been good, right? There's no denying that. He's been injured a bit, which hurts his stocks. Patrick Carrigan's just proven himself as probably the best lock in the game right now, if not, the best forward in the game as well. He's been a massive win for them. There's a lot of questions being asked of Kevin Walters now, which I think is pretty fair criticism. He's got a really good squad. He's got an absolutely stacked squad. The losses of Herbie and Flagler last year were massive, but they've plugged those holes. Selwyn Cobbo's been fantastic.
Cobbo's excellent.
They've got these, Xavier Willison's just developed into these next stars, right? So the excuses are kind of running thin for the Broncos. If they don't make top 6 at absolute minimum, that is an absolute failure of a season.
Yeah, I disagree. I think out of all the teams so far this season, they are the unluckiest in terms of injuries. Because they've just been injuries to just a player here and there. It's been to key players.
Adam Reynolds as well.
Adam Reynolds is a massive one. Yeah. Payne Haas was out for an extended period at the start of the year. Reece Walsh was also out with that eye socket injury. and it was out obviously with that concussion after State of Origin game 1.
Still out, yeah.
They're missing a lot of key players for extended periods, which I think has hurt them.
Yep.
And because of that, I think their best win was that Magic Round win against the Seagulls, where Jock Madden kicked that winning field goal.
Yep.
I think it just proved that look, the Broncos do have quite good depth, but I think the rest of the team is sort of caught up with them. They lost a number of star players, as you alluded to earlier on. I think their worst loss was then the next week against the Titans, where they lost by 2 points, conceded 36 points, which is just very un-Brisbane-like. The room for improvement, again, they just need to make sure that those second-tier players, those role players who sit under the likes of your Adam Reynolds or your Payne Haas's or Reece Walsh, can step up. I think that's where they go. I'm going to give them a C for so far this season. I still think they make finals.
Yeah, I think it's a C+, just the injuries, as you alluded to as well. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. I think my room for improvement, it's a weird one to explain. I don't feel like the Brisbane Broncos have clicked this year. It doesn't look like they're in sync. There's been a few times where Reece Walsh might have an overlap or two and he'll go for himself. Same with Selwyn Cobbo. And I don't know, it just feels like there's something missing. Maybe they need a week on the bye, just get on the piss together and just reconnect. Get the vibes back up, because that's what helped them last year. They were just throbbing on offense, like in attack. They knew where everyone was going to be. They had all these set plays, and maybe that's Adam Reynolds being out. Maybe he's just the answer. But hey, Broncos, go out and get on the piss. It worked out well last time.
Yeah, are you thinking a team bonding session?
Oh, I think what was it? Carrigan and Walsh wrestling.
Carrigan and Reynolds
wrestling.
Yeah,
have a little wrestle, lads, because it seems like that's what you need at the moment.
Yeah, that was such a beat up to start the year. So what do we got? C, do you reckon?
I'll give them a C+.
C.
I think the injuries are a little bit, and it's maybe a little bit too soon to rule them out of top 4 contention. They're only 4 points off. So
let's quickly move to the top 8. The Seagulls sitting in 8th spot. I'm going to go their best win was probably the round 1 win, Las Vegas, 36-24. Well, I think it was a big statement win. They haven't really reached those same heights again, which is a bit disappointing. I think their worst loss, that Dragons loss in Wollongong, 20-12. A lot of teams having their worst losses against the Dragons. But I think what we know is that the Dragons are a better team, but they were so off that day and just didn't even look like coming close. I think their room for improvement, again, just need to be more consistent. They go through patches of really poor performances and then show us how good they can be. I think that win against the Dragons in the most previous win, where they only had 13 players because of all injuries and HIAs and everything else, I think that was a great win. But again, it's just patches here and there. So that's why I'm going to C, because it's another sort of 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10 season.
I would have gone more towards like a B- type, because you look at their losses, it's like 10 points. They beat the Storm the week before. They lost by 1 to the Broncos. They lost by 6 to the Dolphins. They lose by 2 to the Raiders. Their losses have been so tight. So if you can just convert that into a try or a conversion, shout out Ruben Garrick, I think like the Sea Eagles could have almost locked down a top 4 spot by now. They've been they're going to name like a lot of debutants this week. Basically, their whole starting team is out with injuries. Been a bit unlucky. Cherry Evans obviously been their best player, but I think that's a bit harsh. I'd go for a B-. I think they've been good. And look, they lost Tom Trbojevic as well. Like
that is true. That is true.
You can't underestimate how big of a loss that is. Jake Trbojevic is in Origin, the spiritual leader. Cherry Evans goes. Hamoli Olakawatu's gone as well. So you got these players like Lehigh Hopewadi coming through, and you're going to have a lot more debutants, and the Sea Eagles are going to have to show off their nursery up there in the Northern Beaches. But I think it's been a pretty good season so far, and I'd be very excited if I was a Sea Eagles fan.
Yep, that's fair enough. We'll move on to the 7th placed Raiders. I said at the start of the year that Canberra were headed for a cliff. I also predicted that Ricky Stewart was going to step down as coach for the poor start of the season. He's since been extended all the way until the end of 2029. I was wrong there. Their best win, I'm going to say that comeback win against the Seagulls. That was at Brookvale Oval on a Friday night. Hostile crowd silenced them completely. I think their worst loss was that 40-0 drubbing at home. They've been terrible at home this season, which is not like them at all. But yeah, 40-0 to the Sharks, not great. Their best player, who do you think? It's really hard. Ethan Strange is probably the outright.
Shout out to a few of the veterans though. Elliot Whitehead and Jordan Rapinoe. Probably their last seasons of professional rugby league have been absolutely outstanding considering all the injuries. Yeah,
they have been killing it. I think their room for improvement again just need to be more consistent. Their points differential once again is like minus 70 or something at the time recording this. So they just need to be better in that area. That's what really caught them lacking last season. I'm going to give them a B- as their grading.
I might even go towards a B because, like you said, at the start of the season, everyone was ruling them out. And fair enough because their roster on paper looked just average. Like a lot of old, aging bodies and the young players just look too young to come through. But plenty of signs of hope there for the Raiders, and I think they're going to go through another, not a golden patch, but I think they'll be a finals contender for years to come.
Do they make finals?
Yeah, I think they do.
You think so?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, looking at the current scape of it, you probably think the Broncos and the Cowboys, maybe the Warriors are the only ones that can jump in, and then you got the Bulldogs and Roosters that might slide. So there's plenty of room for improvement there for the Raiders, and if they do that, I think a final spot is theirs.
Let's now move on to the Bulldogs. And what a season it's been so far.
Unreal.
I'm gonna spoiler alert. I'm giving them an A+ as well in terms of grading. I think what they've done. I think what Cameron Ciraldo has done.
Yep.
I think we all sort of knew it, but we all just were sort of waiting off. That first season under Ciraldo wasn't great, but it's sort of just installing a new system and just weeding out the players that you knew weren't going to be there for the next season, next few seasons. And now it's all come together, and they're looking fantastic. Their best win was that win against the Knights in Newcastle, pouring down with rain, but just completely shut out Newcastle. 32-2. Newcastle didn't even look like winning. I thought that was their best win. I think their worst loss was that 2-point loss against the Storm at Amy Park.
Yep.
I thought that was a really winnable game, and they'd won there previously the year before in the same fixture. Just couldn't get it done, which was unfortunate. Their best player, I mean, you could name a couple. Dom, who do you think their best player has been so far?
I'm very, very torn between Stephen Crichton and Matt Burton. I think Crichton's getting a little bit too much love because he's the captain. And at the end of the day, a centre as a winger is only as good as his 5'8", which is Matt Burton, who I think has been their best player. Shout out to Reid Marnie, who's really stepped up in the villain role this year.
Do you know what? And all credit to him.
Yeah.
I think he's the perfect player for it. He's a good player. He's a good enough player for it to work. He gets under the opposition's skin. I think Stephen Crichton's been excellent. He's my pick for Dally M Captain of the Year.
Yeah, he's a good shout as well.
I think all the videos you see him off the field on training, even on there as well, when he's saying, "Oh, you got to do this." I think it was with that video with Blake Wilson.
Yep.
I think he's been great. I think shout out to Viliame Kikau as well.
Yeah.
Now that I think he's out injured at the moment, but especially that game against the Roosters in that pouring down rain on that Friday night, I think he played really well and showed that he's an excellent addition to that squad. Room for improvement. Honestly, just continue going how they're going. Just don't let it up. Just keep this push going.
Keep playing your style of footy, 100%.
It's clearly working, and I think I did a mid-season predictions on Traders News in a nutshell.
Yep. 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. every weekday.
5 to 6 a.m. every weekday. And what I said was that I think the Bulldogs can make a preliminary final. If they keep going the way they're going, I can see them being... Because there's always that shock team that makes a prelim.
That's fair. I can't see
I think they're going to be that team.
I can't see it just because of the experience. I think they've still got another year to grow, which is kind of what I had in my improvement is stop going after every player. You've got a great core and foundation. You're under the cap for the time being. You've got young players that are throbbing and who are on good contracts that want to take pay cuts to stay there. Blake Wilson and Jacob Kiraz and King, they're just... Like, this is good. Stop what you're doing. Stop going after every player and build because you're not going to win a championship next year. But 2 to 3 years' time, you look back at it and you go, man, remember that we signed Crichton, Kikau and Marnie, and that was the foundation of an NRL premiership, which would be the first since 2004. So that would be my only improvement for the Bulldogs. But, yeah, shout out to those two wingers as well, Jacob Kiraz and Blake Wilson. Like, you know, you had Bronson Cherry and a few others that are signed, and you thought, these blokes are out the door now. But they have really stepped up, shown their loyalty to the club, and Gus Gould's fingerprints just all over this team at the moment. Yeah,
they're going great guns at the moment. Moving on to the fifth place team, that's the Sydney Roosters. Yep. Let's start with their best win, probably Anzac Day, 60-18.
Circumstantial a little bit because obviously Sawley goes down, but I think the way they just kept going and they were so ruthless against a poor Dragons.
Because typically Anzac Day is always like, doesn't matter how either team are going, it's always going to be a bloodbath.
Forms out the window.
Yep. It wasn't the case. They just absolutely annihilated them. Worst loss was probably their most recent loss, that 2-point loss to the Cowboys at home.
Yeah.
I was watching that game on Sunday afternoon and just bewildered at how they could just let that lead slip, especially given how many Origin stars the Cowboys out. And I know the Roosters had Origin players out too, including James Tedesco, but on paper, that team should be beating the Cowboys comfortably.
100%.
They led 16-4, 16-6, or something like that. They led by 10 points with not that long to go and just surrendered a lead and somehow lost that game. So that's my worst loss. Best player, who do you think?
It's got to be Teddy. Obviously, there's a lot of honourable mentions that could go here. Sam Walker's had just a sensational season. Terrell May, just an absolute hidden gem for the Roosters, and Lindsay Collins as well. Been fantastic. Joe Manu as well. But James Tedesco, far and away the best player for the Roosters this year. Yeah,
I'm going to give a shout out to the halves. I think Luke Keary's been good. I think Sam Walker has really emerged as I think a bankable
Yeah,
halfback.
long-term option for them. For sure.
Room for improvement. I just think, again, just need to find that cohesion in their attack, which has often been the case with them, and they just have to find a way to not lose the unlosable, like that game against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
How do you see them so far? I'm giving them a B-.
I probably went B+ because I think a lot of people looked at them at the start of the season and thought a bit of a top-heavy roster. Keary's probably at the back end. They're trying to get rid of him, and Sam Walker. Is that your long-term halves option? Brandon Smith's been underwhelming since he joined the club, so they've done really, really well. And in considering all the stuff that's happened with Brandon Smith as well, to replace his impact on the game, they've had these great young players come through as well. Bright signs for the Roosters. I'm going B+.
Yep. Okay.
I think just considering what we thought of them before. But one thing I want to say to the Roosters, Nick Politis, if you're watching this, hello, Nick. Don't peak too late. It happens every year. They peak too late.
They do.
Start peaking after game 3. You got a lot of your players back. Not much Origin impact this year. Your last year with Joey Manu and Luke Keary, make it worthwhile.
I think the best thing going for them is that they're currently sitting 5th, and they haven't really played.
That's a great point.
Amazing. Haven't played lights out so far. Now, Dom, let's go to the top 4 and the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins, their best win. It's hard to go past that big win against the Eels at Tayo Stadium, but for me, I think that 38-0 against the Dragons in round 2, biggest win. I think first time they had kept a side to nil as well in their short history, admittedly. But here's the thing. There have been a lot of great wins this season. I think their most recent win against the Sharks, the first time winning in Sydney. It's been a lot of firsts this season for the Dolphins. Who do you think their best player has been?
The cherry-popping Dolphins in 2024, I think their best player has been Isaiah Katoa.
He's been so good.
Superstar he is. I think Penrith will be absolutely kicking themselves. Can I make a hot take?
Yep.
Besides Stephen Crichton, I reckon the player they would regret letting go the most would be Isaiah Katoa.
Yeah, he's really blossomed. I think he had those first-year struggles, but now second year, he's just hitting it lights out.
Yep.
Worst loss... It's hard to even say worst loss. I'm probably going to go with that first game against the Cowboys, where they just looked completely off. There was that bad loss against the Knights, but the Knights went a bit of a run. David Armstrong was having a blinder. I think that's probably their worst loss. Room for improvement. I don't know. Maybe do they need to get more out of their forwards? They do have an aging forward pack.
A great point,
I think their backs are very solid, but I think their forwards are probably the way to go. What do you give them this season? I'm giving them an A so far, not an A+. I'm just giving them an A.
I have to go A+. I think everything was working against them this season. Obviously, they made some great additions with Flegler and Farnworth coming in, but introducing a Max Plath just come out of absolutely.
Max Plath has been outstanding.
I'm going to Max Plath's like my favorite player in the league right now.
Exception of that forward pack, he's been excellent.
And Jack Bostock again, just out of absolutely nowhere. They've had this career revival from Cody Nikorima, and it's been a fantastic season. They know Wayne's going at the end of the year, and they've just continued to go from strength to strength. They're probably going to make a maiden finals appearance, and single-handedly, the Dolphins' success. If the Dolphins are bottom of the table right now, NRL expansion talk is out the window. No one is even remotely discussing it. But because the Dolphins are doing so well, they're going, mate, we've got enough players to go 18, 19, 20 teams. So that's why I'm giving them an A+. I think their one improvement, though, they have to build the platform a little bit better for a world without Wayne. Whether that's adding another top assistant to go with Christian Wolf next year, or just a bit more solidification in terms of that full-time halves partner alongside Isaiah Katoa.
I hard to disagree. I think it's been a good season mostly for the Dolphins. Let's move to the Sharks. Third spot. I don't get the feeling we're very bullish about the Sharks. I want to back them in. I want to be like, yes, there's the performance. I think that magic round win against the Roosters, their best win, I think that was like, okay, sweet, great win. Let's back it up. They did against the Storm the week before in a bit of controversy, so maybe it doesn't count as much. And then, so their best win against the Roosters, and then just completely crap the bed. The bottom completely fell against the Panthers the next week, 42-0. And I think they haven't really recovered from that, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
they lost the next week to the Eels. They then they beat the Broncos, a depleted Broncos. Then they lost to the Dolphins at home. Nico Hines, that miss didn't cost them the game. Their 22-0 start cost them the game. It doesn't fall on him. But I just feel like if Nico isn't firing, they don't fire. And that's the room for improvement. Everyone just needs to lift, I feel, and it just isn't happening at the moment. I'm giving them a C+.
Yeah,
because
back that,
I just think that every time they step up and look like they're going to take that next step, it's 2 steps back.
100%. That's a perfect way to put it, because even when Nico was out and then Daniel Atkinson comes through and just starts showing his development, right? There's been a lot of players that are like that in that team. This team is a fantastic team, lacking a superstar. No offense to Nico Hines, but if you put put Nathan Cleary in this team. This is the greatest team of all time. Like, they are stacked. They have so much depth. Like, how is the fact that Talakai basically started on the bench for the whole year just shows how deep they are. This is a really good team. It's just not, I don't know, there's just that thing missing. And whether it's Nico Hines needs a partner to bounce off or just a little bit more creativity out of the hooker spot, despite how good Brayley is, there's just that little something missing for the Sharks, and it's been missing for the last couple of years.
It has been missing, but I think what's been really good, I think positive, their forward pack, and that's who I'm going to name their best players. I think Tom Hazleton's been really good. Brendan Nickera as well. I think he's one of the most underrated edge forwards in the competition. Now, let's move on to the second place team, the 3-time reigning premiers. That is the Penrith Panthers. How have you seen the Penrith Panthers season so far?
I think a lot of people have underrated the Penrith Panthers.
I have.
Yeah,
I have.
Yeah, I've got that clip of you saying that the Penrith Panthers won't win. You ruled them out of contention like round 2 or
round 1.
So
After they lost 8-0, I said round 1.
I'll bring that up during tax time and I'll claim that on my tax return. But the Panthers, I mean, everything that's gone wrong, Cleary's injury, Taylor May, and they're missing out on Fafita. I mean, everything that could go wrong essentially has gone wrong for them. Obviously, they've still got a lot of their good players intact. I must note that, but they've been fine. They've been flying. They've showed glimpses of just that ruthlessness in attack and the best defense in the league, despite what the ladder says for the Bulldogs. Penrith Panthers will win the premiership again this year. They'll do it with flying colours. They will just absolutely smash through everyone in the back half of the season. No need to worry.
Yeah, I think it's been an A so far this season. There have been a few little blips here and there. I think it's an A. That loss to the Warriors was pretty bad. Ivan Cleary had flames around him in that coach's box. I think their best win, of course, was that win against the Sharks. I think everyone said, he's the big test for the Sharks. And just Panthers proved how much better they are than the other contenders in the competition.
Fair point.
The gap between their best and the other teams is just still night and day. I think their worst loss was the start of the year. That 8-0 loss to the Storm, I think I was worried because their attack didn't look great. Being kept to 0 is never a great start to the season. And they didn't score a second half try in the in that game against Wigan. Forgetting what the name of it is again. It's not the Challenge Cup. It's the World Club Challenge. Of course, the World Club Challenge. Irrespective of the awful officiating in that game, in my opinion, they didn't score a second half try in that one. So they went 1.5 games essentially without scoring a try to start the year. Had me a little bit worried. They've since rallied. Dylan Edwards has been by far the best player.
Incredible.
He thoroughly deserves his Origin spot. It was a shame that he got injured in game 1. All power to him. But yeah, they don't need any room for improvement. They're already basically a perfect team.
Get rid of Taylor May. That's like no disrespect to anything that's happening and like not making light of the situation or anything, but like that's the only thing. Just get him off the books.
He seems a bit surplus to requirement, and they just signed Coppola, didn't they, from the Tigers as well? So they've got backup there.
Laurie, Paul Alamotti, they brought in players in the off season for this specific reason in case players go down, and they have. There's no real room for improvement. Best player, I reckon it's obviously been Dylan Edwards, but massive shout out to Jerome Luai. He's been unreal without Nathan Cleary. He's
been really good, and I think again this has been sort of a season for him to kind of prove himself.
And he
as a number one half, and he's done that in spades. And I think he has been outstanding, and he'll continue to do good things for the rest of the season. Let's wrap it up. The Melbourne Storm in first place. They're the thorn in the side that just won't go away. How have you seen the Melbourne Storm season so far this year?
That's a pretty good summarisation of their season so far. I think Melbourne, again, kind of like Penrith, flying under the radar, just chipping away. They've only lost 3 games this year, which is pretty sensational. They've had 2 buys, which has to be taken into account, which is the reason why they're at the top of the ladder at the moment. But considering Pappenhau's another brutal injury, Munster's been down, they just keep doing it, and we are just the biggest broken records as NRL fans because the Melbourne Storm will always find a way. They always find players. Eli Katoa is just perfect. He's like, they never lost Felice Kafusi. He's there, and they've just got this incredible strategy of recruitment and bringing in players. They keep getting better. They're going to be so much better this year. I think they're going to be going all the way to the grand final, but losing to the Penrith Panthers.
Yeah, to be honest, I have them winning the grand final at this stage. Okay. I think they're a really strong team throughout. What I think we're always waiting for, when they're going to fall down, when are they going to lose, and it just never happens. When Munster went down injured, which was probably the low light of the season, again, they've just somehow found a way. I think, that next crop of players that is coming in are good. I think Harry Grant has been their best player again, but you probably name Xavier Coates has been strong. I think Nick Meaney continues to go from strength to strength. Jerome Hughes is just such a vital player. I think their worst loss was that loss at Brookvale Oval against the Seagulls, where they lost 26-20. That was very unexpected. But, I mean, you can go through a lot of their best wins here. I mean, that thumping in the Eels and Magic Round.
Penrith in round 1.
Penrith in round 1. The thumping against the Rabbitohs on Anzac Day, 54-20. They've really just kept plugging along, banking those wins. And, look, they have had those 2 buys, but I think either without them, they'd still be in that top 4 mix. So that's what I've got them. I'm going to say an A. It's not quite an A+. It hasn't been absolutely perfect, but I'm just going to go an A.
I'd go A+ based on the fact, like, Pappenhausen and Munster go down. Obviously, you bring in Tyron Wishart and Suafalonga, who are just, like, absolute superstars in the making as well, which helps. But, yeah, I mean, they're still reeling. They've still lost a lot of experience in the pack, and they've still got a lot of growing to do, and they've just done perfectly fine without it. There's always that talk of Bellamy's future that never really seems to affect them as well. I mean, it's got to be an A+. I mean, it's like, it's how do they keep doing it? There's something in the water in Melbourne.
There is something in the water in Melbourne. And that just wraps it up for our mid-season predictions. Dom, thank you again. I look forward to the end of the year when we have a look at these and we get proven wrong. The Knights go on an absolute tear and make the finals. The Storm somehow miss out on finals. Penrith win another premiership. It's all to play out. But thank you for joining me here. And, stay tuned for just more content on SEN League.